Welcome to another episode of the Mind, Body and Pipeline podcast. This week we're with Seb Randle. Seb is a well-known figure in the Northwest agency scene. He set up his own consultancy that focuses on supporting the younger people within an organization. And I met Seb in the summer of 2024. We have a very similar story. There was some challenging times that we had when we were younger due to how we felt about our bodies. And Seb and I had a really open and honest conversation about that and how it has affected us growing up and how we've put what we perceive to be something wrong with us essentially behind us. So Seb opens up very, very well about that during the podcast. It's honest, it's humble, it's even a little bit emotional, but particularly for me. So I hope you find the next hour or so really interesting. Seb, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Very well, very well. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good. Thanks again. I know we've had to rearrange this 2 or 3 times due to, big Christmas diaries, my voice last week. So I appreciate you coming on today.
All good.
So we've met and we've known of each other for years, I think, like LinkedIn connections, work in a similar industry, do similar types of things for similar sort of businesses. We've had 2 or 3 very lovely and slightly deep, but in a really positive way, conversations. So I understand about you and your wellness journey. But for the people watching this who might not be as familiar with yourself or with your work, can you give a quick intro into what you do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my current career is a bit different from what it was historically. So I started off in the media and marketing world with some big ad agencies as kind of a strategist and a planner buyer and a business development person. And then I moved over to work for some really big publishers. You may have heard of Shortlist Magazine, Stylist Magazine. And I was their regional sales director in Manchester up until about 2019. And then I just realized after about 20 years in media and marketing that really my priority was people and not marketing as much. And I'd kind of lost the buzz and the hunger for marketing, I suppose. And I wanted to work more closely with people. So I retrained as a coach. And I was just talking about my work one day on LinkedIn when I was reached out to by a lady called Katie Leeson, who you might know actually, Social Chain. She's the managing director of Social Chain at the time. And she said, "Oh, Seb, I love the fact that you're doing your coaching now. How do you fancy being our in-house coach over at Social Chain?" Which, as you know, Social Chain is a big global social media marketing agency. So for somebody to reach out and give me an opportunity like that was kind of massive, really. So I worked over at Social Chain for 2.5 years. And then more recently, I set up my own coaching consultancy, which is called The Helpful Space. And that's really designed to bring coaching to the younger generation because, you know, historically, coaching has been reserved for senior leaders, people who have the money to be able to afford it. And I really believe that in this very complex world that we live in now, youngsters need to have access to coaching too, because I think coaching is a really cool thing to really understand yourself and what you're about and how you bring that best side of yourself to your work. So I've been working with a number of different businesses, kind of in my old kind of media and marketing world, really. I've got some clients outside of that, but predominantly helping those people who are at the start of their professional journey to kind of build those good habits and to think about confidence and self-belief and how to apply themselves. So yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it.
I remember when we first met, you spoke with such passion about it. And I do, I think we're on similar journeys where we've moved our focus from the commercial side of whatever we were delivering and who we were to the people side and wanting to impact people. And if it has some benefit financially, then fabulous for the business or the company that we're doing the consulting for. But actually, it's people first, business second.
Absolutely, yeah. It's I guess it's that whole feeling of wanting to give back a little bit. You know, I don't have kids myself, And I often think like it's almost like nurturing that next generation and offering a bit of mentorship, and that really appeals to me now.
Yeah, no, nice. Talk to us about the wellness journey. From a business perspective, like we've just said, you moved from that commercial to the people side. But when did you start focusing on you as a person? Can you start as far back as you want to bring us to the present day?
Well, I think that would definitely be split into two camps. The first is, when did I start thinking about my mental health? When I was very young. And that's really not thought about it in that way before, actually, because I would say I started thinking about my mental health in my early teens, because there was quite a lot going on for me at that time. My parents split when I was quite young, and my relationship with my dad, well, it wasn't that great at the start, but not because of anything that my dad was doing, but because my parents had split and I was spending more time with my mum, and there was a bit of a disconnect there with my dad. There was a bit of bad feeling between my parents, and that was quite hard for me to navigate. And in actual fact, that resulted in me going to counselling in my teenage years, both for myself, but also with my dad at the time. And do you know what? It was one of the best things that could have happened for me, because it really taught me like the power of a bit of self-reflection. It taught me that not everybody sees situations the same. You know, me and my dad had a deep love for one another, but we couldn't see certain things the same. We couldn't understand one another's perspective. So it really taught me the value of learning and persevering and trying to understand another person's perspective. And I think that's where empathy came in for me. I was seeking empathy for my situation, but I was also learning empathy and learning how to give that back to somebody. So definitely I started to understand the value of mental health and what it was that I really wanted at quite a young age. And then I had to navigate sexuality and coming out as gay, and that was the next thing. So, you know, that whole kind of mental battle that you face was definitely quite present from quite an early age. But conversely, on the physical health side, that was something quite different altogether, really, because I also had some challenges around my physical appearance as I was growing up. You know, when you're going through your kind of adolescence and your body's changing, and wasn't particularly happy with my body, but was never a particularly active person. So I wasn't sporty. I dreaded even sports day at school, because I just wasn't going to be in my element there at all. And really navigated a few things around my health and my physical sense of self, to the point where I actually ended up on the operating table having some cosmetic surgery because I wasn't happy with my body. But if I'm truly honest, I hadn't really learned how to invest in my body fully. Like, I think because at school I was so fearful of exercise, I never learned to embrace it. So I never learned to, well, how can I energize my body in a way that suits me and that can help me stay fit and healthy? So I kind of shied away from it, really. And I think you and I had this conversation one of the previous times we spoke, when the thing that stopped me in my tracks was I was listening to a podcast when I was 40. I was coming up to 40. I was 39. And I was listening to this podcast. And the question on the podcast was, if you were in couples counseling with your body, what would it say to you? And that just stopped me in my tracks, absolutely stopped me in my tracks. And I realized that my body would say, you've known me for nearly 40 years and you've barely even looked at me. And that was like a moment of realization for me, because I was like, you get one shell for your entire life to care for you and to take you through to like your 80s, 90s, who knows, even beyond. And I wasn't doing anything to invest in it at all. So really it was from the age of 40, and I'm 47 now, be 48 this year. That's crazy to say. So it's really this last 7 years that I've really started to fully invest in it.
That's amazing. I love that quote. I've written everything you've said down, but particularly written that down. If you were in couples counseling with your body, what would it say?
Yeah.
That is amazing. I love
Yeah.
that. I really
a question that I think a lot of people it would stop them in their tracks.
No, might have to use it.
Yeah.
I might have to see if I can trademark that off you.
Yeah.
You for it. Quote you with it. So the last 7 years, focusing on the physical side, particularly obviously the mental health side's been fairly consistent for you, focusing on that over the last 30 years or so. But the last 7 years with that physical side, would you say that you've seen a correlation between well, you've set up your own business, but would you say that you've seen a correlation between business performance and physical exercise and really focusing on that health, fitness, and wellness?
Yeah, do you know what? I think I have, because it's given me a new sense of belief in myself. Like, my physical self is not quite where I want it to be, and I'm not sure if it ever will be. I'm still on that journey, trying to feel strong. That's one of the main things. I just want to be able to feel strong, because I know I'm mentally quite tough and I can handle quite a lot. Physically, it's funny actually, because I was thinking about this last week or so, obviously coming back into the new year, just going to my circuits class again after not going for maybe 2.5 weeks, something like that. And a little kind of anxiety crept back in, where when I was being asked to do certain exercises, I wasn't committing to the exercise, and I was just fearful that it was going to be too much for me. And I almost like regressed back to that teenage lad who was at school being asked to do some kind of sport that I didn't really want to partake in. And it felt kind of, I don't know, I just questioned myself, I suppose. I questioned myself. So after 2.5 weeks, I'd gone back to being just a little bit fearful or a little bit anxious. And I think that's what I noticed with physical health, that I need to really keep that momentum and that consistency. But when I do that, it really manifests in my work in terms of kind of, I suppose it's like an energy that I then bring to my work. So it's not like it translates into business per se. It's just that it translates into an energy that I bring to the relationships and that I bring to my business that I definitely notice. And often when I'm going to the gym, because I go to a gym in town, I go to Barry's boot camp in town, and it takes me about 35 minutes to walk to Barry's from my house. So I'll do a fast-paced walk to Barry's, then I'll do my Barry's class for an hour, and then I'll do a fast-paced walk home. So that tends to be an hour of walking and an hour of Barry's back to back, which works really, really well for me. And what I notice after I've done that is that I'm just like bouncing. I'm just bouncing between my emails, between my conversations, and that just feels really, really good.
Yeah. No. And do you do that in the morning?
Yeah. Not early. So I'll probably do an 8:20, something like that.
Can I join? So I've never been to Barry's. I was going to go. I've got a client who I think the reason that we work together is there's loads of other things, and if he saw this, he'd pull me over the coals for this. But one of the reasons is because we like early morning meetings, and we were going to go to Barry's when he was last in Manchester. Something happened. We couldn't make it work. But I haven't been yet. Can I come with you?
Absolutely. There's a brilliant new trainer. There's a new trainer who I strongly recommend. They'll get a little bit of a shout out here, but Chris Millard, who's one of the new trainers to Barry's boot camp, is fantastic. So yeah, his class is one that I look out for.
Nice. Okay, no, brilliant. But I think when you go and do a Barry's, and we'll come on to your circuits, and Barry's, it's hard. And if you go and do a hard thing in the morning, and you know that that's probably the hardest thing that you're going to have to do that day, do you feel that as well? That bounce that you get in the rest of the day off the back of that, I think is really nice.
Oh yeah, it's a pride that you have for getting through that, because It's intense, but what I absolutely love about that is the sense of community and just you're in there like sardines to a level on the treadmills. I love running on a treadmill. A lot of people prefer running on the road, but I like because I think it's because it's at the same pace, because you can set the pace and you can get into a rhythm with it. That's what I quite like. But you're all there, the tunes are pumping, which I absolutely love. That really helps me with my exercise with the music. And it just invigorates you, really. I love it. It really starts my day in the right way. I'd love to go twice a week and then do circuits 3 times if I could.
No, nice. And apart from your little gap, are you fairly consistent, would you say?
Yes, I have been pretty consistent over the past definitely 3 or 4 years. I've been pretty good. What I'm trying to get now is I'm trying to bring my nutrition in a little bit better, because that's where I'm falling down at the moment, particularly after this Christmas that we just had.
Well, now tell me about it. And what does that routine look like on a weekly basis? Obviously, you've got half an hour. Is it a couple of miles walk each way then to Barry's? You're doing that?
Yeah.
Once a week, twice a week? Did you say you'd like to go more?
Ideally twice. So sometimes I'm doing it twice, but more often than not, it's probably once a week.
Yeah, nice. And then you've got the walks. Anything else that you do from a physical perspective?
So I've got Barry's once a week with the walk into town and back, and then I've got circuits 3 times a week, which is Mondays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. Sometimes I have to back out of the Saturdays because my partner lives in Wales and I'm often traveling in between Manchester and Wales. And then also I do have a gym membership, so I'll maybe go and do one kind of heavier weight session in there as well. So I try and be active 3 to 4 days a week. If I do anything less than 3, I'm not happy with myself.
And do you still see, for the mental health side, do you still see a counsellor?
I don't at the moment. I've got a coach at the moment who's sort of helping me around kind of planning and strategizing for the things that I want in my business. But I've had counseling and therapy. I've had couples therapy in my past relationship, which was very interesting. That's probably
Is it the beginning of the end?
It was actually. It was almost like part of cementing the decision in many ways.
That is probably another chat.
Yeah. But I'm all for any kind of talking therapy. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
I thought about, and the same client I was talking about with Barry's, he would quote himself as being one of the most therapized, however he uses that word. I'm not going to get it out right now. Therapized, I don't think it is that, but he goes to therapy a lot and has done for a long time and is a big fan of it, and took his mental health more seriously, or has taken his mental health seriously for a long time, and now is very physical, runs a lot, does high rocks and things like this, but he's a big believer in the mental therapy, and he's a consultant, a coach himself. He fixes big problems in big businesses, but he has somebody helping fix him, put him together, because he's dealing with a lot of trauma in business, and then he has to help piece that back together on a weekly basis. And he's a huge fan of it and so open about it as well. It's lovely.
Yeah, there's lots of different routes that you can go down with that. I mean, coaches tend to have supervisors. So they're sort of like people that you can bring those bigger client challenges to and kind of speak quite openly about those, which I think you do need if you're dealing with people who have got quite complex situations going on for themselves. And also a couple of friends of mine have been kind of deep in therapy, probably for 3 or 4 years. And a couple of them say, you don't actually fully get to understand the power of therapy without being in it long term like that, because the way that I've used therapy and counseling is I've maybe had somewhere between 6 and 12, maybe 15 sessions or something like that over a period of time, and then I've stopped. I've almost like used it to navigate a particular thing. Whereas I think you can use therapy and go really deep in over a longer period of time and really try and get right under the fabric of how you work and think, which appeals to me. It's just like any kind of service like that. It does cost a bit of money, and people's financial situations are changing all the time, so you've got to adapt to fit whatever works for you at that time.
No, I agree. No, I like it. And we could talk about that. It's an area of my life I want to investigate a little bit more over the next few years. I think I've started to, you know a little bit about my journey, and lots of people watching this will do. I'm going to share more about it. But I think I know myself now, and I'm settled now. And I think getting the best out of myself physically is a plan. And I think I'm on the path to doing that. But I think mentally as well, it's a door I want to open and do a few sessions. And then if I presume I would see the power. I mean, like anything, like a good gym routine, and you just stick to it week in, week out, and you see it build and you see yourself grow. And I just want to be the best version of myself for my family, future family, if Emma and I have one. And that includes being stable here, completely stable, which I feel, but you never know, do you, about what's around the corner. So I think making sure I've got those.
Yeah. I don't think you can ever do too much so long as you retain some element of perspective on it as well. Like, sometimes you can feel that maybe some people spend too much time and it almost like consumes them a little bit. And I suppose it's like just understanding what your levels are a little bit. But I've always found with any kind of one-to-one work or therapy or coaching that I normally take out 2 or 3 kind of learnings or lessons or nuggets from that period of time that stick with me after that are really, really helpful, which has been really good.
Oh, nice. No, it's fabulous. And I like the word I think you used earlier about empathy, wasn't it? It was a word that you used a lot about being empathetic and learning to give empathy as well.
Yeah, that's feeding into my work quite a lot, really, because I don't know how you feel about this, but I just sense that there's a lot of so much polarization, so much pulling of people's opinions and perspectives, and just we all know that social media does it, and that it pitches us against one another, and people end up locking horns. And I just think we're all very much locked in our own vision of what our own individual lives are. And I do a lot of work around allyship. So that's another pillar of my work, which is all about trying to put yourself in different situations with different people and learn different perspectives that you might not ordinarily come into contact with, because it teaches you so much when you're in environments that you wouldn't normally be in. And I think that's where the empathy is fed into that, getting empathy from therapists, counselors, being open in relationships, understanding people. It's taught me that like everyone's story is valid, and it's very easy to get into a disagreement with somebody because their perspective isn't the same as yours. But you can actually find so much learning and growth from being around somebody who's got a different lived experience to you, or who feels differently about something than you do. I think that's really important as well. It's an open-mindedness that I try and bring to life, because what's the point in just feeling like you know it all already? Like, you always want to be enriched by the new people that you come into contact with.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's great. Topic. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you teach your clients. I think it sounds really exciting. Really, really exciting. The defining moment from what I've picked out so far is, well, there might have been a couple more, but let's talk about recent, is that quote. If you're in couples counseling with your body, what would it say? That sort of made you prioritize, I would say, sort of the health and fitness and the wellness side. Has it been easy to stick to your routine?
I think
easy to keep going to the, what have we got here? The circuits sort of 3 times a week, Barry's once a week, gym membership once a week. You've got your sort of the therapy stuff as well, popping in maybe once a week. It's quite a busy schedule. Is it easier to stick to?
I would say that it took a year. It took a year of persevering and maybe falling off the wagon a little bit. in order for those habits to kind of stick now, like I'll maybe go 1 week where I'll fall off and I'll maybe do 2 sessions or 1 session of something. And then the following week, I'll be like, no, that's got to come back again. But it took a year of struggling with it in order for that to happen. One other thing that I was just thinking about when you were speaking, then something else that I say to some people and they go, Seb, you're talking rubbish. But this is a thing in my head, is that tall men die young, right? I've got that in my head because I'm 6'4", right? And I know people shrink as they get older. You shrink a few inches, but I'm probably not going to shrink more than 3-4 inches. And that means I'm still going to be a 6-foot old man, right? Where are they? They don't exist. There aren't any 6-foot old men, apart from like maybe Sean Connery, or who I don't know if Sean Connery's alive now even. But that has also been in my mind, the fact that I'm so tall and that I need to keep my shell strong because I don't see old, tall men around. So again, that pushes me on a little bit in my quest to develop some kind of fitness.
Would you say that you train consistently out of fear? Is that the right word or the wrong word?
I just want to give myself the best chance of being around. And I've not had kids. I'm 47. It's still something that I think about potentially doing. Still there as a possibility. My partner wants kids. And so, realistically, I'm not going to be a dad until I'm in my 50s, I would have thought, if that happens. And therefore, at 70, I'm probably still going to have maybe even teenage kids if that happens. So it's all about just thinking what my life is, how my life is panning out, and the fact that I need to be in good shape if I'm going to see the things through that I want to achieve in my life.
Yeah. No, we've spoken about it before. I don't have kids either, but the plan is to have them, and wanting to be the best version of myself for those kids, but ultimately being hard to kill, so that I'm around for as long as possible. And I think you talk about being strong, but that grip strength, being able to do squats, being able to lift weight above your head, being able to, those compound movements. There is scientific evidence that being able to do those correlates to longevity.
Yeah.
And I want to be in my 60s and 70s lifting that suitcase above the seats in the airplane with ease, and it's not going to be easy. It's about being consistent, but it's simple things like grip strength. And you see older people can't. I never thought about it until the last year or so. They can't open jam jars, or they can't open, they can't pull back the tin of the tomatoes. Lack of strength, because exercise those muscles and use those muscles. So I get that. Wanting to be strong is really important. We've had some of the women on the pod. My wife hasn't been on, but she would resonate with this. It is about being strong mentally and physically as a woman, and they found that very, very important to them. But yeah, that word strong is really, really important. Tall men die young is interesting.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to plant that in your head.
I quite like that because I'm tall. I'm not as tall as you are. But
those things that you just mentioned, like opening a tin of tomatoes, putting your case above your seat on an airplane, these are everyday things that people suddenly aren't able to do. And that's why I'm doing it, because I just want to be independent and active, and I don't want to have to rely on anyone or anything around me to be able to do what I consider to be the fundamental basics. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I like that. I think we're getting through here then some short-term and long-term motivations for staying committed to the health. Is there anything else that you would add? Any specific goals that keep you motivated to sort of lead you down a path a little bit? I know you did what's it called again? What's that?
So I did the Deadly. That's what I've noticed, is that I've built some good habits where these things are becoming the fabric of my everyday. But what I haven't done is set myself some real physical challenges or goals. And I never want to do it to the point where I'm putting my body in danger of like, hurting myself or whatever. But I certainly think that having something to work towards that's like some bigger focus definitely makes sense. A friend of mine told me about another thing similar to Deadly Dozen, which is set in a car park in Cheshire. And there's like 7 levels of this car park, and you have to like run in between the levels doing different exercises on each floor. And again, they have like banging music. Yeah, apparently it's really good. I've got the link, so I'll send it to you afterwards. Can't remember.
Let's get a team. I don't even know what it because I did the Deadly Dozen in Macclesfield, loved it. As you know, I've done a few high rocks. I'm doing one in 2 weeks. That sort of functional fitness, movement, anything to do with it, I love it. And with the music as well. That's my buzz. The classes.
Yeah. So that sounds good, definitely. And I think the other thing that I've just been really grateful for is communities that come together for the purpose of fitness or staying healthy. There's so many good positive things like that. Like, for example, something that I found just prior to lockdown was Fresh Walks. I don't know if you've ever come across Fresh Walks, but a guy really successful again in the marketing world, had a couple of issues with his own mental health, set up Fresh Walks. Before you knew it, it was really taking off. He's now doing like big events for corporates where people can just, go for an amazing schlep across the hills of like 25k, have someone else map the route for them so they don't need to worry about the navigation aspect, and just meet such a variety of like different people, which has just been brilliant. And I've actually found quite a bit of business through Fresh Walks, which has been great as well, because you're not networking in that kind of slightly forced way that some people find a bit icky. You're looking forward, you're looking at a world much bigger than you whilst you're talking to them, and it's just such a nicer way to find out what somebody does and what their business is about. And so I love any kind of event-led networking that involves, building a better you. I think that's just brilliant.
No, well, you're preaching to the converted, as you know. Absolutely. No, the Fresh Walk stuff, I love it. I think it's great. I think it is a great stepping stone for people. And I'm all about that power of community. And it's a question that I'll come back to about getting business from that community. So we'll come back to that. Just jump back to the goals, though. You've done the Deadly Dozen last year.
Deadly Dozen. Definitely want to do this car park one, whatever it's called.
As I've said,
I mentioned about my running and how I prefer running on a treadmill. I did start going as well to a running club that was being run by an ex-boss of mine who's now a running coach, and that was a free running club on a Thursday, which was really great. And because I want to try and learn how to run a bit more easily and freely on the road, because I would love to. I find running quite mindful when I'm in a good flow with it, when I like the setup of it, and I would like to do a half marathon potentially. So that's on the list probably before I turn 50. And then probably something related to hiking, like maybe Kilimanjaro or something Machu Picchu, something like that would be great.
Nice. Can I add one to your list?
Go on.
Fancy doing a Tough Mudder on the 26th of July. Leave that with you. We're going to. I've just signed the contract this morning. So as a business, we're going to take 20 business owners to do Tough Mudder in Yorkshire. Well, it's in Skipton, so it's in North Yorkshire. It's a lovely part of the world. On the 26th of July. So that's the first time I've even said it out loud. So you're the first person that knows about that. This pod won't be out for a few weeks, so people will. I'll talk to other people about it. But just pencil in Tough Mudder, 26th of July, in a field, if you like car parks, in a field in Yorkshire somewhere. I've never done a Tough Mudder, and I just think it'd be a great thing to get the group and the community together.
Definitely like the sound of it. It's like scrambling and stuff, that, isn't it? And like over the boards and things like that, and under net. And
I think so, absolutely. But I think you can walk, run it in between. But I think the important thing is you stay as a group and you help each other get up those ropes and you help each other get under the nets, because there'll be different people. You'll probably be able to, because you're tall, getting under the nets might be really difficult for you, but actually, you know, if we're talking pushing a sled or something, not that that will be there on the Tough Mudder, but that'd be easier for you than somebody who's really small and doesn't have a physical weight behind them, you know? So I think it's all, that's, I suppose that's the angle I want to take with it anyway. It definitely won't be a race. It'll be about building the community that we've got around these events. So yeah, just pencil that in. That might be a little challenging goal for you. 50K Tough Mudder on the 26th of July.
50K, is it? Wow.
You can do a 5K one. So you can do a 5K one, but I think we're going to go for the 15. I think it needs to be a challenge. 6 months away, 7 months away. I think it needs to be a challenge, I believe.
And how important are challenges, physical challenges to you as someone who's like, you know, you're further ahead than me in terms of getting yourself to a particular place with your physical health. Like, just interested to know, you know, even people who are at that higher level than me are still pushing themselves on with those types of things. Why do you do that?
I think it's because I didn't do a lot of it in my 20s. So I feel like I'm making up for lost time a little bit is one reason. I want to be the best version of myself, and a way to keep me accountable on the training weekly and daily is to set goals and targets. So I've got 3 high rocks this quarter. I've got 2 half marathons this quarter. The first half of the year, I've got my first trail run in May. So I'm doing a 21.5 mile trail run in the Lake District. I'm not a runner. I've never been a runner. I'm learning to run, and having to sort of teach myself and learning to love to run, but also teach myself to run injury-free, because nobody really teaches you to run. You just run at school and when you're a kid. But I'm definitely seeing the people that are good at running have had some form of education in running at school, or they were part of a run club or an athletics club or something. But for 98% of us, we don't run correctly at all. So therefore, the more you run, the more you're likely to get injured. And it just happens. It's got to be the most dangerous sport in the world, running. It has to be. The amount of people I've met in the last 12 months who have got injured through running is easily the highest. Easily. So yeah, it's a sort of off-topic maybe sort of way of saying that it's having a challenge and holding myself accountable, because I'm a bit of an all or nothing person. I always have been. I was with the booze, was with the partying, I had been with the consultancy and the business. I've just got full on into it. We're doing that with the events. I am with friends and family and people, and with the fitness side. But I also know, I suppose, that particularly on the nutrition side, I allow myself room to breathe, if you like. But I know if I've got things in, I know how horrible, I'll finish that off. I know how horrible you feel if I don't drink, but you know, I know people have turned up to the classes hungover. I know I've had a couple of pizzas the night before a gym class at 6 a.m. That is not a nice place to be at 6:15. And we've all been there. And I think it's knowing that you did your best and you did everything that you could to perform well on the day. And it's not necessarily about comparing myself to other people's times. I know that is important to some people, but it's just being the best version of myself and just being able to turn around in 15, 20 years and say, I did a half marathon at this time. And to do it in that time, it takes dedication. There's a certain amount of natural ability, but for me, I know that it will be dedication. I know that I have to eat right, train hard, do ice baths to be as good as some people that don't need to do that. I know I do.
It's funny, you know, the sense of accomplishment that you get from these natural highs is amazing, really. And I just wish back in my youth that someone had explained this to me in a much better way, because I was just fearful of it. I was just terrified. I was intimidated. I was just lacking any kind of confidence. If someone had really educated me about what that could really do for me back in the day, I'd be a different man now. And that upsets me to a level. So part of my mission to myself now is kind of rewriting history a little bit and getting back onto a level footing where I know I could have been had I gone in there from an earlier age, really.
No, I agree, but we all fall off track, don't we, from time to time? I did over Christmas. I swear I I had like sugar withdrawals for the first couple of weeks of January. When you've fallen off track, what's made you get back on it?
When I've fallen off track,
How have you got back on? Has there been anything that's made you just go, right, fuck it, I'm going to go to Paris this morning when I put it off for the last 6 weeks?
I think people underestimate how great walking is, and walking's a bit easier to access, Like, I'm lucky because I'm half an hour out of town, so I can do a little speed walk into town, and already it just kind of gets things moving around my body a little bit again. So I'd think about, rather than the big goal of I want to do 3 or 4 gym sessions a week and I've not done any this week, like what's the first step towards it? I think that's the main thing, is like starting to think about just what can I do today, and that's always helped me. Like and fresh walks as well, just going out and seeing a big expanse in front of me can just kind of minimize those kind of struggles or frustrations that you might have about yourself. If you go out and see a massive view, it's just, there's something quite powerful about seeing a landscape that's huge and then realizing, actually, this stuff that I've got, I don't need to worry about that. I can just get back into the swing of things and do it again. So yeah, just thinking about those small steps, and also the accessibility of walking or hiking or just, walking at pace, I think gets me back into the swing of things.
No, it is good, definitely. No, I agree with you, and I think it's a step that people have to take, and there aren't many people. It's not many people walking their daily amount of steps that they should be doing.
No.
It is surprising. I think when we go to these, the circuits and the classes and things that you go to, you're surrounded by this community. Same with me. And you think that that's what the world's like, but it's not. It's not. No, that's a small.
Another thing, and I know that these are taking off massively, and I'm trying to embrace them, and we'll be doing so with you. And next week is the water dips. What I've noticed though, I think there's a lot of people out there in the world who would love to swim more, like actual swimming, where they're, doing 30 or 40 lengths in one single swim. And there's no, like, as far as I'm aware, there's no one doing that collective kind of invisible swimming coaching where we're getting people back into the water and building their strength through swimming. I just don't see that at all.
No.
And you can book a swimming coach, but I would like a community of swimmers that can learn to really improve their strength in the pool, because swimming is such a brilliant thing, and I want bigger shoulders.
Are you a swimmer then?
I was back in the day. I used to swim for Stretford when I was young, and then I lost touch with it. But I know that I've got the power to be a good swimmer if someone was willing to give me some lessons. So I would really love to build that into my routine somehow.
Yeah, nice. No, I'm triathlon curious, so I will be doing a triathlon this year.
Curious.
Yeah. I've geeked out so many YouTube videos about triathlon. I lost a lot of hours in like September, October to YouTube videos on triathlon. Positive stuff, I think. But yeah, I'm definitely curious. I'm going to do the one in Abersoch, I think, in June in Wales. Yeah, I'm there anyway, so I think I might just go a couple of days earlier and do that one.
God knows when you have time for house renovations or business when you're doing all these challenges.
Well, I know. And look, I think with me, my training happens at 6 a.m. So it never gets in the way. Really, I mean, even Sunday morning, myself and my wife, the snow was here, wasn't it, in the northwest, and we're on the treadmill doing 15k, which, by the way, we do not love. We would much rather be outside. At I don't know what time it was, 6:10 in the morning, because it had to fit in, because we had to do the rest of the day was painting that room, not this room, the room in there. It was painting that and priming that and prepping that. And otherwise, you put it off, and if it's a priority, you make it work, and it happens, and it goes in first in your diary, which is something I was going to ask you actually, is that I schedule everything in my diary weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. Anything for me, which includes going for a meal with my wife, going to the cinema, having my cousin round for dinner, working out, having an ice bath, having a sauna, having a massage, whatever it might be, doing a race, is in bright orange.
All of those things are bright orange.
All of those things are bright orange. They're me stuff, right? So that's anything physical, mental, positive, doing anything fun. Okay, so that's stuff on me. And I plan it as far ahead in advance, which allows me then to be able to schedule work and everything around that. What's your process? Because you're doing a fair amount. If you stick to everything, that's a good 5 or 6 hours a week.
It's interesting because the circuits, because you book them for a period of time, they're in my diary until the end of time at the moment. So they're just in there. And you know what? I commit to them because they've become part of the fabric. Whereas my Barry's, for example, moves around, and that's like, I need to find a Barry. It's space for Barry's. But you're right. If I just said, right, Tuesday, 8:20 every single week, that's your Barry slot, that would be helpful. When I worked at Social Chain, there's a lady there called Charlotte who was the ops director, and she was under a hell of a lot of pressure. Very, very busy lady. But she said to me once, she said, I don't get overwhelmed with my schedule because I've got my non-negotiables that I put into my calendar, regardless of how busy I'm going to be, whether I've got a pitch on, whatever. I put my dog walk, I put my gym session, I put this in my diary, and they're not going anywhere. And then I just do what I can with my work responsibilities around that. And that works for me because I know that if I don't let those non-negotiables slip, I'm going to feel great. That was the first time that I really started scheduling my personal activities a little bit more, but I could do it more so like you are, because I think that definitely makes a lot of sense.
And I think when I see all the sea of orange, I could do a screen share for you now. If I see the sea of orange, I think, fuck, I'm spending a lot of time on myself. It makes you feel nice. And then anything client related is in yellow, and there's as much stuff going there. And then anything BD related is like bright green, and I can just see that. Am I spending enough time on myself? Am I spending enough time on clients? Am I spending enough time on BD from a color-coded glance?
Yeah, I like that because I've been doing Barry's in one color, circuits in another color, fresh water's in another color, haircut in another color, and I'm looking at it going, I don't really know what's going on.
That's all bright orange.
Right. Yeah.
That's all. My haircut is bright orange. That's all. That's all bright orange. And I think you fit things in. So I've got core hours that I make myself available 10 till 2. Outside of that, I have my haircut at 7:30. The guy opens a little bit early for me on a Thursday when I want to see him. I asked, so I got. People just don't ask. They're like, oh, and when you don't, I schedule my hair appointment every couple of weeks. It's in the diary, done. Some people don't do that. So then they're like, oh shit, I need my hair cut. And they've got to go at like 3:30 on a Thursday. That's banging core work hours. So that's just all I'm trying to do. I just think I'm organized, really. I don't think it's a priority for me, and I'm organized. And that's it. My mates take the piss out of me. They're like, oh, we're going to put that in the calendar. I'm like, well, do you want me to add you to my calendar invite? Because it's going in mine. You know?
But you plan in advance, the more you can choose where it goes.
Of course. Absolutely.
And that's the best bit, isn't it? Because it's not vying for your attention at a time when you've got another priority.
No, absolutely. And I think if you prioritize it we went over to my parents' house in York for around sort of the New Year period. And I remember my mum saying to me, are you coming on the 30th? I said, yes. And she said, are you coming for lunch? And I said, no, because when I looked at my calendar, I had a fit test at my gym in bright orange that started at 9:15 or something. So I knew I wasn't going to be finished that till 10:15. By the time I got home, by the time we then went 90 miles over to York, all that type of thing, it was realistically going to be 2-3 o'clock. So I wasn't going to make lunch. But I also knew that fit test was going to make me feel good for the next couple of days. It's a priority. You prioritize what you want to prioritize,
I like it. I've got some tasks I need to do after this call where I'm going to go and new color coding.
It's orange. Send me the details on the car park. That'd be good. Those are a couple of tasks. A couple of tasks, and then pencil in Tough Mudder 26th of July into your diary in bright orange because it's fun. It's fun and it'll be for you. You touched before about the community. You got some biz off it. That was going to be my question. Have you ever seen business happen off the back of these fitness, health, wellness communities that you're part of? The short answer is yes. Can you expand on it a little bit more?
So when you're doing fresh walks, for example, you tend to talk about your business, but you don't go in with a hard sell, because that would just feel out of place. You're on a really nice walk, you know, you're inquisitive about what people do and where they could potentially support you or help you. What tends to happen is you'll meet, 25 people or so. 3 of them will stand out as maybe people that, hang on, there's a bit of a link here. There's something that we could do together. And so then you would book a follow-up with the person after the walk for a coffee where you speak more specifically about the thing. And that's happened a couple of times now where, you've got to know someone great. You get to know them more for them. You start to see that there's maybe a bit of a pull. And then you maybe formalize that in terms of like a work offer to them afterwards. And I've ended up getting coaching programs within people's businesses for 3 and 6 months as a result of meeting them on a fresh walks and just trying to understand what their business challenges are, how their people are feeling, the kinds of, problems or things that people are presenting with at work, and how I can potentially support them with the helpful space. And then that's come to fruition. And also those people have just become really actually quite close, reliable friends as a result of meeting them the way that I did, as opposed to kind of meeting them at a network event and them always being that kind of probably stuffy business person. You've got something in common where you both enjoy the outdoors, or you both enjoy whatever that thing is that you've met them doing. So that brings people together in a bit more of a genuine way, I think.
And in my opinion, again, preaching to the converted, I love everything you've said there about that, and how you've analyzed that form of networking, is that for a relationship to be a good one, whether that between a client and a supplier, or between 2 partners that are going to refer business to each other in some way, there has to be a common value. Has to be. You have to like that person. Why are you friends with people? Why do you, and because you have common values, you've got something in common. My sister has 2 young kids. All her friends at the moment are people from nursery. They're all these people that they're meeting. Their common value is the fact that they have 2 young kids. Her other friends are friends from university that they had a common value with. They went to the same uni, they did the same course, they did the same things. And then her other friends are people from school who have a common value of being from in and around York, and our parents are friends and all that type of stuff. Business should not be any different. And imagine doing business development with only people that you have common values with, and only people that you like.
Yeah. Well, it makes it a bit of a pleasure, doesn't it? It's less of a task and more of a collaboration, a collaborative thing.
Of course it does. No, it's awesome. It's awesome. Final question. Lots of people watching this, we spoke on it before, want to take their health and fitness more seriously. That's the whole idea behind the events, is that people meet other people, similar to what we've just said, new peers that are interested in the health, fitness and wellness. But lots of people don't 100% know where to start. What would be your one piece of advice to get somebody going?
Firstly, to think of that question. If you were in couples counselling with your buddy, what would it say to you? Because that's what's shocked me into action for a start. Put your non-negotiables into your calendar. Like, strip it back and think, next week in an ideal scenario, what is it that I would love my week to look like? And plot those things in and be realistic about it, but also make it a little bit challenging, where it feels like if I got to the end of that week and I'd done those things, I would feel amazing. And then just start with the things that are really accessible. I'm on 3 floors in my house, and if I walk up and down stairs twice, maybe 3 times back to back, I've got a bit of a sweat on. So just think about what's within your immediate vicinity. Instead of getting the tram to work, I'm gonna fast-paced walk it. It's going to take me 20 minutes on the tram. It's going to take me 30 minutes if I walk at a fast pace. So it's like 10 minutes difference. So yeah, I think those three things, that question, putting it in your diary so you can see it, and then just making it accessible.
Awesome. Appreciate your time.
No problem.